Hello everyone, a very good afternoon to all of you. I am Anand, welcoming you all on behalf of Solar Quarter and First View Group to the first day of Middle East Rooftop Solar Congress 2022. Hope you had a good time networking with your peers today. We'll have those networking sessions again at the end of these sessions. Now, it's time to start on with our conference. But before that, I take the pleasure to thank and welcome our partners, Huawei and Longi Solar, for extending their immense support to organize this event. Now, we'll play the sponsor videos.
The number one solar company in the world. Let us look at how that has been achieved via a series of groundbreaking milestones. 20 gigawatts, a new milestone. In 2020, Longi became the first solar technology company to ship more than 20 gigawatt modules annually, which almost equals to the installed capacity of the largest hydroelectric power plant. Longi has 15 manufacturer bases and more than 30 branches in 11 cities around the world, cooperating with more than 5,000 customers and energy groups. Regardless of environmental conditions, be it cold, heat, drought, or humidity, the reliable performance of its solar modules makes Longi the leading light in moving the world towards a green and sustainable energy future across 6 continents and 85 countries. Technology changes our future. Longi firmly believes that the science and technology will change the future and create a better life. Over the past 21 years, Longi has been totally committed to the monocrystalline technology, convinced that it would bring about industrial technological change and become the benchmark for the global PV industry. Between 2012 and 2019, over $826 million have been invested in R&D. As of June 2020, Longi has accumulated 858 authorized patents. In 2015, Longi took the industry lead in achieving 100% diamond wire cutting of monosilicon, increasing the cutting speed by 90% and saving the PV industry over $4 billion each year, the monetary equivalent of the annual construction of 5 Beijing Olympic stadiums and national aquatic centers. Longi's commitment to the promotion of mono-PERC technology successfully opened the door to the PV 3.0 era. Since then, the industry trend has undergone significant change, with monocrystalline now dominating with a market share of 90%. Increased innovation is the mantra and commitment of each and every Longi employee, breaking world records and industry barriers no less than 14 times. The front-side conversion efficiency of a Longi monobifacial PER cell has reached 24.06%. People-oriented, value first. Longi remains fully customer-oriented to create the best solar modules. From M2 to M6 wafer standardization, Longi has demonstrated full commitment to bifacial power generation technology and has led the industry into the 450 watt plus high power era. In 2020, Longi took the lead in launching the M10 wafer standard with 6 other leading organizations in the industry, and has also released the 5th generation of its ultra-high power modules, HIMO 5, with a maximum power of 540 watts and a conversion efficiency of more than 21%. The company's people-oriented, value-first approach is fully reflected in every scientific and technological innovation at Longi. With dimensions and weight of 2,256 by 1,133 millimeters and 32.3 kilograms, respectively, Longi adopts established and reliable horizontal and vertical packing and transportation modes, ergonomic standard installation, and outstanding life cycle performance in response to various environmental and meteorological conditions, leading the industry into the era of the 182mm module and standard. Longi, always moving forward. Longi is continuously providing green energy for education, medical treatment, agriculture, forestry, fishery, retail, and other industry sectors with its solar technology. At the 24th United Nations Climate Conference, Longi announced the green development concept of solar for solar and became the first Chinese solar energy company to join the RE100, EV100, and EP100 initiatives. Longi commits to always delivering against expectations in order to usher in a bright future for green energy worldwide. LONGi, always moving forward. LONGi, leading the energy revolution, making green ambitions reality.
What is it that takes us further into the future? It exists in every visible detail, and somewhere in the unexplored possibilities. We imagine countless times that dry deserts become lush oases, and now it has become a reality. Sunlight spur a new ray of hope, make the earth green, and breathe new life everywhere. The size from rural to urban areas get simplified gradually, conserve the nature, and ensure seamless connectivity. Turning complexity into simplicity. Modular construction of data centers is designed for an intelligent digital world. To unleash cloud computing potential and to accelerate the smart future. Speed up for future transport. For every pleasure travel, green power is used to achieve an excellent experience. Modular power can be highly integrated and applied everywhere. To light up the moments you are looking forward to. Bring unlimited possibilities and make life better and convenient. Huawei Digital Power. Preserve Earth with technologies. For zero carbon, smart society.
So now, let me quickly take you through the agenda for today. We'll be having two sessions today. Our first session will be on CEO and government talk, regulation and landscape. And after that, in our second session, you'll hear our expert panelists discuss about the technological advancements, constructing profitable projects, and assessing viability with storage. And now, without any delay, let's begin our first session. And this session will be starting with a sponsor presentation by Mr. Gonzalo Binello, Middle East Area Manager, LONGi Solar. So you can share your screen.
Hi, Anna. Give me 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Anat. First of all, I would like to thank you, Solar Quarter, for giving us this opportunity and having me to explain a little bit about our products, our company, and how the solar rooftop market looks like for the next coming years. I would like to start by talking briefly about LONGi. Most of you guys may have a lot of questions about which model supplier we should consider when we are designing our plant, or we want to buy some modules for our villa or apartment. So at the end of the day, we have plenty of suppliers, but each supplier is different. So I would like to go quickly through the main reasons why LONGi should be your main supplier, and then I will focus on the products that we currently have available for the rooftop market. So we have tried to summarize the reasons into 5-6 points. As you know, Longi Solar has been ranked by multiple institutions such as Goldman Sachs, Fortune, Forbes, and others as the world leading solar technology company with the highest market cap. And this is possible thanks to the strategy that the company is following. We try to summarize the value chain of the PV module in multiple steps, so they are easy to understand. So we have 6 steps. In the case of Longi, one of the key reasons why Longi is so successful and is growing year after year that much is because of the high vertical integration of the company compared to other competitors. As you can see, Longi starts from the step 3, which allow us to absorb in a better way the impacts of the market in terms of pricing, conditions, technology, etc. And also to control the quality in a different way. At the end of the day, we are a manufacturer. We were a manufacturer of wafers. Now we are also a manufacturer of modules, and we are selling wafers to third parties that manufacture modules as well. So, as you can imagine, being vertically integrated help us to control the quality of the products and therefore to commit on the commitments that we take with clients. The second main reason is our worldwide presence. We have multiple offices around the world, despite we have local teams in many countries, even if we don't have a physical office. Depending on the size of the order, we are working with different distributors, so we shouldn't be worried. No matter where you are located, Longi can supply you the modules either directly or through a distributor. Okay. In the particular case of Middle East, we have local presence here in Dubai, where our main office is located. However, we have local teams in several countries like Saudi, like Jordan, and so on. And we have a very big network of distributors in several countries. Longi, it's right now the largest module manufacturer by far compared to the rest of manufacturers. As you can see on the right side of the slide, Longi represents around 24% of the production capacity of modules, and this allow us to sell without any restriction to clients, and therefore to any kind of developer or distributor or a small client, no matter where they are. The fourth reason is the bankability. It's quite important to understand that Longi is according to Bloomberg and PVTech, is the most bankable manufacturer in the industry. As you can see there on the right side of the slide, we have the highest financial health compared to other manufacturers, and there are even some manufacturers below the threshold for insolvency risk according to Bloomberg. It means that in a period of time less than 2 years or equal to 2 years, the chances of being insolvent or bankrupt are significantly increased. So why this is important? This is extremely important because when we are selling modules, we are committing on certain warranties. In the case of the product warranty, we talk about 12 years. In the case of the performance warranties related to the performance of the module, it's 25 years in the case of monofacial and 30 years in the case of bifacial. So the clients should be focused on this because warranties should remain, and the company should be available to honor those warranties. And in case you don't have enough financial health, the company may disappear, and therefore the warranties could disappear as well. And last but not least, the fifth reason why we consider Longi the best partner for the rooftops is the R&D investment that we have been doing in the past years. As you can see, the investment of R&D is significantly higher compared to other competitors, and in fact, even if you sum the rest of competitors, it's not even similar to the one LONGi. This investment allow us to to be competitive and to have reliable products, and we cannot do this without our industrial partners like Sangro or Huawei and Extractor and some others. I have listed only a few of them, but we work with the majority of the industry. Okay. Then if we discuss a little bit about the products, we should understand first that the products are mainly divided in two big groups. We have 210 and 182 millimeters. As you know, the module has been evolutioning from time to time, and we started with a smaller wafer sizes of 156 millimeters, and year after year we have been increasing the sizes. Recently, LONGi Solar announced 182 millimeters wafer, and we believe this is the maximum size that we are going to consider for the next coming years. For us, 182 is the optimum size, and I have tried to list the 6 main reasons why 182 is the mainstream now, and is going to be for the next years. Regardless of the technology, the size will remain the same. First one is fuel efficiency. As you know, we should not focus only on the size of the module and the power of the module, but in the efficiency. We have seen in the market manufacturers that they supply modules with a bigger size than LONGi, but the efficiency of the module is lower. Therefore, you are not optimizing the space of your rooftop. You are just occupying the whole space, but the power that you could get to be higher in using LONGi modules. So bigger module doesn't mean choosing the best option. Okay. Second reason is the mechanical stress. As you know, the bigger the module is, the higher the chances to get a deformed module. As you can read there, based on our studies, we conclude that 210 modules are 50% more deformable than 182, which is going to impact significantly the performance because you increase the chances of micro cracks, which means like breakage of cells, higher degradation of the module, and therefore a reduction in the life of the module. If we consider the cost structure, this is also important. Usually the rooftops require a fixed steel structure, and the bigger the module is, the bigger and the heavier the structure should be. So there are some limitations in some markets, and the amount of steel we need to use or aluminium, and therefore, with the current level of prices of such raw materials, it's worth it to consider a reduction in those materials. Fourth reason is the transportation cost. According to our analysis, the amount of power that you can transport in a 40 feet high capacity container is lower in the case of 210 than 182. The reason mainly is because of the 210 is a bigger module, and despite you have lower modules and higher power, you are not optimizing the size of the container. Container has a limited size, which is an international standard, and you cannot modify it. So we are able to transport more modules despite the power is lower. So if you make the calculation, you would see that the number, the total power per container in our case is higher. So in this way, you are optimizing the transportation cost, which as all of you know, it has been multiplied by 3-4 times the previous prices that we saw pre-COVID. The fifth reason is installation. As you know, 210 modules are bigger modules, and therefore they're heavier, and it requires up to 3 people to install the module. So we are talking about modules beyond 35, 36, 38 kilograms, and therefore the installation of these modules required minimum 3 people in a rooftop. Per module. In the case of 182, 2 people is more than enough. So therefore, we are also optimizing the human resources. And the last reason is the production capacity, available production capacity. 210 is a size that has not been standardized for many suppliers, and therefore, in case you have any problem with the module or you want to buy more spare parts, it's going to be difficult to find this supply in the market. So even if you still believe that the 210 is the best option, you will have difficulties finding suppliers. So now that we understand that 182 is the best option, let's see the products of Longi. The main product that we are currently considering for the Middle East market is the HIMO 5 series. We try to keep it simple to our clients. We don't like the fancy names. Our strategy is quite simple. HIMO means high efficiency module, and 5 is the series 5, which is the latest one. We have 3 different versions, despite 72 cells is the mainstream right now in the market, and I would say it's 99% of the sales in the Middle East. We have 54, 66, and 72. But again, 72 is the main product, and usually is the one which is easy to get a stock right now. So these 2 are mainly focused for residential and CNI, and in the case of the 72 cells, we can reach up to 550, 555 watts, depending on the delivery time. We have in both versions, monofacial and bifacial. However, for rooftops, 99% of the times we are installing monofacial because of the different reasons, like the optimization of the LCOE, and therefore the production that you can get. Bifacial was designed mainly for utility, and therefore we are not improving the yield in a rooftop. For 54 and 66, there are 2 other options: 415 watts in the case of 54, and 505 in the case of 66. Again, these modules doesn't mean that they are better or worse, which means is that each size is different, and therefore we have different sizes according to the size of the rooftop. For example, in case of the commercial and industrial, if we have big rooftops in the factories, it is easier to install 72 cells. But if we have like a small rooftops for a villa, and maybe 72 is too big, and we want to optimize even further the power that we can get in the rooftop, maybe we can consider 54 and 66. Obviously, this analysis should be done by your installer, and they will support you with the best analysis and designs. If we try to list the reasons why HIMO 5 is the best option compared to other products in the market, over 182 products, the reasons are quite simple. The first one is the energy yield and the lower degradation. As you know, we are providing 12 years product warranty and 25 years performance warranty. Okay, in this way we can also reinsurance the product in case the client demands it, and we can reinsurance the product so you have fully covered, and even in the case of insolvency or bankruptcy of Longi, which is very it is not really possible, very low chances, you are still covered. Regarding the product sizes and how compatible is a product with mounting system and inverters, the reality is that the module is fully compatible with the majority of mounting systems, and depending on the type of fixation that we consider for the module, the loads of the maximum loads acceptable for the module will be different. In the case of lone side fixation using 4 clamps, we're talking about 5,400 Pascal on the front side and 2,400 Pascal in the back side. The same happens with the short side and edge fixations, on which the values are significantly reduced. So we always try to recommend to focus on the long side fixation using 4 clamps to prevent any problems related to the wind, the snow, or the sun. It is true that the snow is not a big problem here in the Middle East, maybe in some areas of Lebanon, but the wind and sun, yes. Then we also have the compatibility with inverters. Longi is extremely focused on the designing of the products that are compatible with inverters. We have seen several manufacturers that they have very limited production capacity of inverters beyond the 50 amperes, and the aim of Longi is to keep the amperage always lower than 15. In this way, we can we can assure that cost of the inverter and the availability of the inverter will be always there. You can see there are the values of 54, which is the lowest one, and we are able to reach 94, sorry, and 13.18. And last but not least is the quality of the product. You may think, okay, Gonzalo is telling us about the quality. Every model manufacturer is talking about the best quality, but the reality is that we have third-party certificates that warranty that the promises that we are currently doing to clients and distributors will be real and will be happening. As you can see there on your screen, we have several tests from different third-party authorities like RATC or PBL, on which we have been ranked as for the third consecutive years as a high achiever of their quality test in terms of reliability, performance, and quality. And in the case of PBL, for the fifth consecutive year in terms of thermal cycling, dam heat, PID, and extended cycle, which is a combination of different tests. Again, I would like to to remark that HIMO 5 is the best choice for your solar rooftop, no matter the size of your rooftop or the requirements that you may have. We have the right product for you, and is ready to be supplied to you, either directly or through distributors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this insightful presentation. I request you, yeah. Thank you. So now it's time to begin the first panel discussion, which is on CEO and government talks, regulation and landscape. And to discuss this, we have in the panel with us Mr. Joseph Sadakova, Head of Solar Department, NG, Mr. LK Verma, Managing Director, Power and Sun, Mr. Shyam Yadav, Managing Director, Clenagize Consultants, Mr. Fadi Mirzi, General Manager, Izzat Mirzi Group and Verma Solar. The session will be led by Mr. Aftab Raza, CEO, Fine Value and Senior Advisor Regulatory Affairs, Abu Dhabi Department of Energy. I welcome all the panelists on the screen and hand it over to Aftab, sir.
Thank you very much, Anand. It's a great pleasure to be here to join this conference, and especially to moderate this session of very distinguished speakers. We have lined up four amazing speakers. Unfortunately, two speakers were not available, so we will try to compensate those two speakers as well. Before I introduce our speakers, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Aftab Raza, leading a Canada-based consultancy firm. I have over 25 years of experience across the energy chain. I have worked as the consultant, advisor, and senior management executive for the governments, regulators, utilities, and investors in Europe, Asia, Middle East, and in Africa. Over the last 2 decades, I have worked for the Abu Dhabi Department of Energy in various management positions, including the Director of Economic Regulation and Head of Sector Financial Management. I'm passionate about the energy transition, and you can see from my articles and posts on the LinkedIn. I believe that the distributed energy, which is the topic of today's session, plays a key role in the energy transition and decarbonization efforts to ensure that the world sustain and we achieve the sustainability goals. We always talk about the net zero. Again, solar energy is key, and there are many factors, and we will be touching on some of them, that why solar has become the choice of clean energy and renewable energy, not only in the Middle East, but wider in the world. The continuously declining cost of the PV and the competition, which has again resulted in the lower cost, has played its key role. But at the same time, government policies and regulations have been instrumental in promoting the solar. I have extensive experience on the utility scale projects, including the very first 10 megawatt solar PV in Abu Dhabi, and then 100 megawatt and recently 2 gigawatt project in Abu Dhabi, which has achieved its world record tariff of 1.35 fills per kilowatt, 1.35 cents per kilowatt hour. We know that Saudi Arabia has even got lower last year to almost 1 cent per kilowatt hour. But I believe that in addition to the utility scale project, the behind the meter or small scale, or what we call here the solar rooftop distributed energy, has the real potential to take the energy transition to the next level. In today's session, we will focus on the policies, regulations, incentives, and plans from the government, from the manufacturers, from the developers to develop the solar rooftop programs in the Middle East. To start this discussion, I would like to invite my first panelist, Fadi Marzi, the General Manager of Izzat Marzi Group. And I would request Fadi to introduce yourself, your organization, and enlighten us briefly about your organization perspective on the rooftop solar. Thank you very much, Fadi. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Fadi Marji. I'm the General Manager for the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Department at Izzat Marji Group. I'm also the General Manager of IMG Solar, located in Dubai, specialized in solar rooftop projects, and also the General Manager of Wamst Solar, located in Saudi Arabia. So the market there is also starting in the solar rooftop. We are a company specialized in solar rooftop projects. Nevertheless, we have executed many free field projects due to the fact that there is a special regulation in Jordan called the wheeling. Maybe during the panel we'll explain about this unique legislation that allows the user or the consumer to do the installation off-site, so in another area. So this is, let's say, our key experience, solar rooftops. We strongly believe in distributed generation. We strongly believe that the governmental visions and strategies and programs should pour into this important sector, the distributed generation, and which is translated in solar rooftop projects.
Thank you very much, Fadi, for enlightening us with your perspective and insight. You have highlighted certain key trends, and I will definitely come back to you with more specific questions to enable our audience to know more about your insights and perspective. But before that, I will go to the next panelist on our session to introduce himself, Joseph Sadaka, Head of Solar Department, NG. If you can introduce yourself, your organization, and share with us what do you see the landscape and your interest in the rooftop solar programs and plans.
Good afternoon. I'm Joseph Sadaka from NG. NG is a French organization that is operating now in 70 countries. We are more than 170 employees, more than 170,000 employees all over the world. Now I am the head of solar department in KSA and Gulf area. I am heading all the projects that are behind the meter. Actually, most of our projects are ground mounted, but there are some projects that are rooftop, especially in Saudi, in the in Mudun where there are some factories that doesn't have any land, and now in Saudi Arabia we don't have the wheeling program. So we are when we have this issue, we are solving that with rooftop-mounted systems that are between 5 megawatts and up. And actually now we have in hand two projects, two roof projects for industrial application of 20 megawatts each. So this is what is happening now in Saudi Arabia. And we have some projects that are coming as a rooftop in Qatar. Qatar is moving on. Our team is building now some projects in Qatar for some small rooftops between 1 megawatt and 2 megawatts. We are not an EPC company, we are developers. So we install our systems and we lease the system up to 25 years. One of the things that we take care of is to have a tariff much lower than the tariff that is provided from the utility. For example, in Saudi Arabia, the tariff for the industrial is 18 halala. So we are trying to provide tariff for rooftop not more than 14 halalas. This is what we are trying to do, and this is what we are doing now.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for introducing yourself. And I'm glad that you have highlighted two key challenges or trends which we should be discussing in our panel today. In addition to other, the tariff for the grid supply, which basically provides a reference for the industrial, commercial, and even residential customers to decide whether to go for the rooftop program or not. And sometimes it's a challenge in the region because we see subsidized tariffs here. The second trend which you have highlighted is equally important is the financing models. And you mentioned that NG has been active as the developer in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, mainly leasing the solar panels for 25 years and so. So thank you very much, Joseph, for this insight. I will now turn to our next panelist, LK Verma, the Managing Director of Power and Sun, to please introduce himself, his organization, and share some introductory remarks about the topic.
Thanks, Mr. Aftab.
LK.
Very good afternoon to everyone. It's always been a pleasure to be a part of such discussions where all experts and the veterans of the industry are together on one table. A very brief introduction about myself. LK Verma. I'm a founder and managing director of Power and Sun. Power and Sun is a wholesale distribution company. We move the solar components to the sites, buy, stock, and then sell. When I say wholesale, I talk about around 200 megawatt per year. So till now, we have done around 900 megawatt of modules and inverters have been moved out from our warehouse. In the Middle East region, we have Power and Sun Dubai, Saudi, Jordan now, and now actually also in Oman. So this is what we actually do. And why we do this is because there are two key aspects in a solar project, especially on a rooftop solar project's value chain, where we see that we can add value, and that is making or basically increasing the speed of a solarization process by reducing the project turnaround time at least by 25-30% through a material planning ways, through the best practices and procedures of actually supply chain and the principles. This we do it by capturing the real-time market demand, creating projections, drawing forecasts from there, placing in advance the framework agreements or actually the orders to the manufacturers, and keep a buffer of at least 30-40 megawatt at any point of time on a sea, so that all the fluctuations of prices, all the fluctuations of demand supply gaps, they are getting met. Second is to reduce at least 2-3%, if not more, the cost of a solar projects through the application of actually supply chain practices and principle. So this is what we do. We've been quite active in this region from the last say couple of years. Rooftop solar, coming on the subject today, we work only on a C&I and on a residential sector. So utility scale is not, and this is not even a discussion for a today's meeting also. In a rooftop policy framework from the regulatory bodies, consultants, EPCs, developers, financial arrangements, when everything has actually happened, when all those things has been done or planned or signed, then the actual execution is to the extent of 60-70% material availability to the site in a right quantity without any wastages. Those are the areas where we actually majorly contribute. I see a lot of hope in the region, especially 2021 and basically the second quarter and the beginning of this quarter. The beginning of this year in a first quarter, we see almost in a residential side in the region, the demand has almost doubled. I hope this continues and we are able to contribute more to the industry through this, forums and meetings like this.
Thank you, LK Verma. I share your optimism, and as I said, that although I have seen a lot of progress on the utility scale myself, today's topic, as you mentioned, is about the solar rooftop and focuses on the industrial, commercial, and residential customers. You have highlighted two key factors, and we will turn to those factors as well: the efforts to reduce the cost and managing the entire supply chain so that the capacity is available in time. We have a very good mix of the experiences and capabilities, as well as the organizational perspective today in the session. We have seen developer, and we have also seen now from LK Verma, the wholesale side, the supply chain management. That is great. I will now turn to our last but not the least important speaker, Shyam Yadev. He's the Managing Director, Clenagize Consultants. Shyam, welcome to the panel. If you can introduce yourself, your organization, and briefly your perspective on the subject of today's session. Shyam, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, Aftab, and thanks to Solar Quarter for putting this together. So we try to keep this very practical and try to be very useful for the people who are listening in such webinars, and be slightly consistent with what we put out with the information of this industry, because it's still very new in this particular region. So Clenagize is a solar energy consultancy company. We also do sustainability, ESG, and energy efficiency now, but primarily focused on solar energy here. We started about 6 years back, and we started with a very simple need in the market. There weren't many consultants in the C&I space. There were a lot of utility consultants and other MEP consultants. And clients normally are not very well versed with this technology. It's pretty new, and they need hand-holding, right from the feasibility to tendering, to selection of the contractor, the legal contracts, the financial models, buying it versus leasing it versus bank financing it. And then to review the design and to supervise the projects on the site, they need help. So we set up the company to have capability on all fronts: technical, legal, financial, and on-site supervision, so that we can be the client's representatives or owners' engineers. And very often even lenders, engineers, especially for institutional investors who are coming from outside, who don't have local on-ground experience. So few things work very well for us. We did about 560 megawatts in the last 6 years in this region, which is a pretty significant size considering the number of rooftops in the region. And that probably only UAE had led that till now on the rooftop front with the policy. So we are very active in UAE, very active now in Bahrain, starting out in Saudi, done a few projects in Oman also. And the range of our clients is pretty well known. We've done Aramex, Emirates Flight Catering, Agility, Landmark Group, Emirat. So a lot of government clients, a lot of private clients. But I think where we have the best position in the market in terms of a vantage point or a view on the industries, we collect at least about 50, 60 tenders every year. So you're talking about 15 to 20 bidders per tender. At least 200-300 offers come to us every year. So we understand the price points very well, the technical points very well. We have our own live monitoring plants running across the region. So from a data perspective, what's really happening on the ground is known to us quite well to make patterns, assumptions, and forecasts. Touching the topic at hand with this regulation and policy aspect of it, we're in an industry where it's completely governed by that. So we actually can't move an inch until they set the pace and the path for us and the ease of business for us to do so, as that's the step one. So while it started pretty aggressively in UAE, you saw there are large roofs here. People are very interested to work here. Some of the lowest LCOEs in the market, on the highest amount of sunny days in the year. So a lot of contractors, developers, financiers came down and they set up shop. But a couple of things to understand here are while the countries are large, they're not as large as probably your US, India, European markets would be. So finding that market space for such 15, 20 aggressive contractors and developers becomes challenging if every single country does not have a running policy. So we're in a situation now where I think everybody's aware of what's happening in the local regulations here in the UAE. And people are trying to find other, conducive places to work with all the teams that are set up, with all the infrastructure that is set up, to find gainful work in rooftop solar now. It's fun to view it from this viewpoint, but I'm hoping it's leading somewhere where other countries and Emirates are also taking example and opening up the policy and making it easy to execute. Drafting a policy is one thing, ease of execution is a whole different thing. And the private sector moves very fast when you make it easy to execute.
Thank you very much, Sham. Very good insight, and I'm impressed by the diverse perspectives now we have from this group with you, Sham, on board. You have highlighted a couple of things which I would like to discuss in the session. You have rightly mentioned that while UAE and Gulf and even wider Middle East have quite a lot of potential for the solar radiation. However, you're concerned about a couple of things. One is the overall size of the market compared to some big markets in the developed countries as well as developing countries. The second area of your concern is the robustness of the regulation, the policies from the government, as well as the pace at which these policies are provided, implemented, and facilitated. Thank you very much for this perspective. I would like to turn to our first speaker with some specific questions. If Fadi, you allow me to continue from certain points. You mentioned that your organization, if I recall, working based in mainly Jordan, but has reached out and established yourself in Saudi Arabia and Qatar.
Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and Kuwait,
and Dubai, UAE. I will not restrict, obviously, discussion to only these countries, but I think because you have presence in these key markets, I would like to understand your take on the role of the regulatory framework, which the regulatory framework plays in promoting the solar rooftop, especially the grid saturation we have seen reached in Jordan, for example, or Dubai. You mentioned in your intro the regulatory framework in Jordan about the wheeling, but how you see the importance of such legislation?
Yes, thank you. As you know, for the different markets, we are seeing a lot of challenges For example, in Jordan, we reached in many areas grid saturation. There is resistance from the electric companies to give approvals. In fact, in early 2019, all rooftop projects beyond 1 megawatt were put on hold. We started to see the same in Dubai, for example. There is a restriction for 2 megawatts per plot, no free field installation for the adjacent lands. There are also some countries where they did not develop net metering scheme, for example, Kuwait. And there are some countries such as Saudi Arabia, they are still in the learning process. So the market still needs a big push. So what we see is that the legislation and the stability of legislation is an important and a crucial element for any market to be developed. And even though we face many challenges, I always say that challenges create opportunities. And it is important for each country to develop the legislation in a way to, as I mentioned in the introduction, to pour into the vision of the country. What is the strategy? Do we need to do the transformation? Do we need to do the energy transition? And this, as you see now with the political situations, the energy independence is very important. So people now are starting to realize that this is an important element. And there are many ways to do this. First of all, I would always say stability of legislations. Second, continuous development of the legislations and regulations. Because, okay, if we reach a market saturation in certain areas, then we can develop, for example, new legislations for partial storage, as an example. Maybe I'd like to mention that there are opportunities for changing the schemes. I strongly agree that net billing instead of net metering can push the markets forward. To explain to the audience, for the two schemes, the net metering, you export kilowatt hours and they are credited to the consumer, and when you consume from this energy, the kilowatt hours you take from your balance, while net billing, which is implemented in Saudi Arabia, when you export energy, it is credited as a monetary value, as money. Although I might disagree with the low rates for export for Saudi Arabia, it's very low. It's 5 halale, which is 1.5 dollar cents. It should be, of course, higher, and it should reflect the actual price of electricity. This is another way to push the market forward. Energy storage legislations, net billing systems. There is also an opportunity. Instead of saying, okay, we reached saturation in this area, we can, let's say, the utilities can give provisional approvals. Let's say you want to install a 5 megawatt rooftop project. Instead of saying, no, we reached saturation. No, I can give you the 5 megawatts provided you install, for example, a partial storage system providing, for example, 4 megawatt hours of storage in order to shift the loads for the peak evening hours. And I don't think that the size of the market will stop. I think by the end of the century, until the end of the century, we will still have business in the solar industry, and we will still have business in the distributed generation, provided that the governments would act in a proactive way. And I have many ideas. Maybe I can discuss them in the next session, in the next time. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Fadi. A lot of insight in couple of minutes, and a lot of education for the audience. I see the key points you have raised is the stability of the regulatory framework, as well as developing the policies and regulations further, not only with the evolving political situation and economic situation, but also with the technology. You have touched on certain specific markets. Although I work as the senior regulatory advisor for the Department of Energy, Abu Dhabi, I'm not representing them at this session, so I can freely talk about various government policies. I think your first point is the key, the stability of the regulatory framework, and you also touched on the how these policies should develop. I just want to continue your initiative to educate our audience, for those who might not know that the pioneering countries like Germany started promoting solar projects and renewable energy projects with the feed-in tariff, which were quite attractive to subsidize. At that time, the grid tariff was compared to your own generation from solar was very low. The solar was quite expensive, and we are talking about early 2000, even 90s. Then we move to the next regime or regulation, which is net metering, as you explained. In simple terms, it's credit for your generation excess supply to the grid at the same tariff at which you receive the grid supply. Now we see the new trends moving towards the net billing, which is effectively paying for your excess supply from the solar generation at a different tariff than what you get from the grid. And generally, this new tariff for your solar generation is lower than the grid. It is what we call in economics the avoided cost of generation. Unfortunately, some of the countries have changed the regime without giving due notice to the industry, and even worse, they have changed it retrospectively. And we have seen such an attempt, and I'm currently based in Canada, so I can share very quickly two examples when California tried to propose very recently a regime change from net metering to net billing, and it backfired, and the regulator put the decision on hold. But in Florida, another state in the US has gone ahead with their legislative parliament approving a new plan to move towards net billing. And this has not been taken positively by the environmentalist, by the solar industry, renewable energy industry, and definitely I personally feel that it's a setback for overall decarbonization and energy transition efforts. You mentioned, you touched on the legislation for the evolving technologies, and you give the example for the battery storage or partial storage. Is there any other suggestion, Fadi, you have, which the government policies should encourage, how they can encourage further distributed energy in the region?
Yes, actually, one of the things that have been successfully applied in Jordan, it's called the wheeling legislation, which allows any facility, because the most challenging thing in any facility, for example, a hotel or a hospital, the lack of rooftop space. So this legislation in Jordan allowed this facility to, let's say, buy a land, or if they own the land in somewhere else, other than the facility's location, to install a PV system and to inject to the grid as if it is located on site. Of course, there are some additional costs that needs to be paid. For example, in Jordan, we pay 6%. We call them wheeling losses, and we pay around $1 per kilowatt hour. It's called wheeling charges, but this thing can solve the challenge of lack of space. There are also other things, and before I touch into this, I agree with you that when I said the stability of legislations, I encourage, let's say, the development of legislations, but they should not touch the consumers retroactively. This is important. So when, until today, there are consumers in Germany still feeding the grid with the feed-in tariff. And even now, one of the things that might be also applied, it's called the time of use tariff, meaning that you get charged as a consumer at different tariff levels, encouraging the consumers not only for distributed generation, no, for distributed storage, I would say, because the new era will be the storage technologies, so that you could, let's say, shave the peak of the generation instead of exporting this to the grid at low rates and to store it to the evening peak, because normally each country, of course, it's different, but mostly we have two peaks. We have a day peak and we have an evening peak, and we have off-peak times. So these matters, actually, it's like small technical matters that can encourage and push forward the improvement for distributed generation. There are also other items, for example, initiatives from the government to execute governmental projects. For example, distributed generation for governmental buildings, for governmental schools, governmental hospitals, worship places. Even many countries, they subsidize some categories of the consumers. So those should, it is much cheaper for a government owning a utility to install a distributed generation system, a solar rooftop system, instead of subsidizing them continuously for the bill of each month. No, it is a one-off cost. I pay once, then I remove this subsidy for good. So there are actually many ideas that can be implemented, and maybe we can touch more of them during our discussion.
Fadi, I am very impressed by the way you are explaining these regulations. These are my bread and butter, the designing the tariff and the regulation. I'm impressed by your perspective and how you have explained a number of key concepts and regulation for our audience, starting from the wheeling. And I can support you that wheeling is a concept has been used in the developing countries quite extensively, and even with more advanced concepts where they have merchant plants participating in the wholesale market. At the same time, they have contracts with big giant companies in the IT, for example, Amazon and Google and so on. And this wheeling concept is a very basic starting point to promote, as you said, citing solar projects somewhere where you have the space, but acting as that it is meeting the demand of the customer. And normally we are talking about a big customer here, industrial and commercial. The time of use tariff is another one. The use of government buildings to promote the solar is quite good. And I know that from my experience in the UAE that the governments there, Dubai government has promoted this idea as well, and other governments as well. And one key key factor which I have in mind, and I would like to touch with other panelists as well, is how the real estate market works in some of the Gulf countries, whether they pose any obstacles to the long-term projects which you and other developers, for example, finance. I would like to move, Fadi, thank you very much for the time being. I will move to our next speaker, Joseph Sadaka. If Joseph, you can share your perspective, how do you see the regulation is evolving in the region? and how they should evolve. You have been active in many countries, including KSA and Qatar, but even in other countries, how do you see what are the challenges and how the regulations are working, and what are the improvement areas of improvement in the government policies and regulation? Joseph, over
Where
to you.
I will talk about Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, they are trying not to inject the people. Wira is trying to let the people install solar panels, but not to inject to the grid. They are afraid from that. That's why things is going slowly. So self-consumption now in the Saudi area, in the Saudi Arabia is going very good, but the regulation they are saying that the regulator is saying that we must not inject to the grid, and that's why if we inject to the grid, the tariff will be much lower. There are big projects that are coming in Saudi Arabia of 1 gigawatt and 1.5 gigawatt that are installed in remote areas, yes. But what is happening on the rooftops until now, that it's only a self-consumption. And I think in the next 5 years, it will stay like this.
Now, this is quite critical and very important point you have mentioned. I believe that until the battery storage becomes economical, the customer will be relying on the grid supply. And once they have the connection with the grid supply, the countries should try to have arrangements to allow excess energy to be supplied to the grid. I have seen the government mindset in many countries. We like the utility scale project, big projects. The utilities like big projects. In your view, why the utilities and the regulators are not allowing the injection of excess renewable energy or solar into the grid, Joseph, and how this
They,
challenge can be overcome?
yeah, they are afraid because they think that they will not be in control of the grid, and that's why they are delaying the thing of net metering. And they are telling the people, okay, if you want to install on your rooftop, you can, but if you want to inject to our grid, it will be not economical, so nobody will inject. So what is happening now in the market in KSA, that all of them are installing a self-consumption. What is happening in Saudi Arabia the most now is that the Ministry of Energy is saying that for people that are operating on heavy fuel and diesel generators, we will stop that, and you should take care of that, and maybe you will be connected to the grid, or you will find another way. But for the people that are connected to the grid and they want to install on the rooftop, you cannot inject. They are afraid. They don't know how to solve the problem if a lot of people are injecting to their grid. This is why things are going slow.
And you think that these challenges or lack of concerns about the lack of control over the system is technical in nature, that the uh, connecting customers do not comply with the grid specifications, or this concern is because the utilities, and I'm not talking only about one country, we see these trends in other countries as well, where the developers, where the customers feel that the utilities or the government owning those utilities do not want injection. Is it because they don't want to lose control over their kingdom, their system? It's not about technical, it's just
It's
feeling that we are the.
two things. There are two types of challenges for them. The first challenge is that the people that are installing solar power are becoming their competitors. This is one. The second is the technical issue for the control of the grid. For example, I have a very big factory that is connected to the grid, and we are discussing to install solar. And if we install a very big power plant for them, they will consume less from the grid. And the operator of the grid saying, okay, if you consume less, but we will pay you as a spinning reserve. So they are trying to push us out, but things is going. This is what is happening all around the world. The utility doesn't like the renewable energy people, and because we are competitors, and this is how life goes. But yes, we have a challenge. Until now, in Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf area, the feasible system that we can install is the self-consumption, and it's good for now as a first step, because self-consumption in a day is a very big amount of energy and power. So I think we should start what we have in our hands, and we will see tomorrow or in the future what will happen.
No, I'm also very optimistic.
Yeah, but for sure that the target that is done at Saudi Arabia, that in 2030 that we are going to be 50% on renewables, this is going, and I think that the market will be very good.
Thank you very much for sharing your optimism. I'm also very hopeful that
and especially what is happening in the green hydrogen. The green hydrogen in the next 2-3 years will be feasible for all of the people, and maybe it is the way that you can install more PV and store it as a hydrogen and then generate it at night. This is one of the things that I think that it will come from now till 2025, 2026.
Yeah, definitely we can have further discussion on green hydrogen. I want to move to the next panel, Joseph, but I want to take one further point from our discussion, and if we have time, we will go back and touch with you on the challenge why the utilities or the governments are. You mentioned two reasons. There might be, and I would like to share this widely with the audience and other panelists. There might be concern from the government or utilities that they have built generation capacity and they have now excess capacity. They build those capacities for the customers to meet their demand for next 5, 10, 15 years. But now, as the customer move towards their self-generation, those generation capacity will become excess, and they will find it difficult to recover the cost of those excess capacity for next few years from the remaining customers. And there is a debate going around in the world about the fair treatment of the customers, both the customers who have got the solar and those who do not have. But I would like to move to the next panelist before we touch on this one as well. Thank you very much, Joseph, for the time being. Mr. L.K. Verma, I would like to pose similar questions to you. Do you see the need for further development or refinement of the legislation, regulation for the solar in the countries you operate, and do you have any concerns about them? Do they pose any challenges?
Thanks, Mr. Aftab. I think there is definitely a scope of improvement, but instead of speaking about improvement, let's take a call on what exactly is in our hand and what we can, how and in which way we can actually optimize it. Now, this is one area which I think needs a similar amount of focus than the improvement or bringing a new legislations. Another area which I would like to add to this debate is uh, especially for a residential sector, which is predominantly a rooftop business, how the financial institutions are going to come forward for a quicker and fast better solarization. Now, having said that, I think uh, if we take a GCC, we have a policy in place in Dubai that was started from there. We have in Abu Dhabi also. Then we have it in Oman. Then we have it in Saudi. Then we have it in Bahrain. I believe Qatar and Kuwait are also very close to issuing it, or I'm not aware if they have already issued a policy as far as the rooftop solar is concerned. So the point I think here we need to ask is all this in a given situation, with the current situation of products, policies, pricing, are we doing enough? I think this is what is required to be looked at. Is there a scope in the current situation itself? If Dubai is installing 110 megawatt, can they install 200 megawatt? Or what will happen if the 200 megawatt is installed in the same year, which was expected to do it in 2 years? I think these are the few points. Secondly, from a C&I sector, the average size is 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, maybe 3 megawatt, 5 megawatt. These are the normal sizes. Now look at a residential sector where it is 20 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, 15 kilowatt, 30 kilowatt. In those, say on a residential side, I firmly believe in the existing in an existing setup itself. If the financial institutions, especially the banking institutions, they come forward and a type of a loan is given, like personal loan or a solar loan, which is a short term, 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, like what we have it for a vehicle finance, something similar to that. I believe in the existing setup itself, there is a space to grow by at least 20-30% within this year itself.
LK Verma, thank you very much for your, again, very useful insight. I like your positive approach to capitalize on what we have in the plate, what regulation already exists, and work around them to benefit ourselves, benefit the society. And you have rightly identified the need for financing models which help the customers. I would like to briefly again ask you, who are the players in your view which should take the solar market to the level which you're talking about, for example, doubling the installation? Do you think that the banks are not aware of this opportunity, or they are concerned about, again, I will go back to the stability in the regulation or any areas of the regulation, or there is simply lack of interest or awareness of the financial institutions to provide this financing, or there is a lack of awareness on the customer side that they are not exploring the financing from such institutions? So in your view, what is,
Yeah, I
which
think
player has to play their role?
yeah, you have touched a very, very sensitive and a core point. Now, why does any financial, let's talk, I think you have asked in a question almost 3 or 4 different points. So let's take one by one. As far as financial institutions, the banking especially is concerned, and giving a 2 years, 3 years loan to have a solar installations on their rooftop, especially on the villas, and this model can work very well in Saudi and other places where you don't have a high-rise actually buildings. Now, what happens is, just compare this with the car finance. So when a car is financed, if there is a default, there is a possibility of recovering a car and then getting a value out of it. So, 20% paid by the user, 80% paid by the bank, and the structure is in such a way that if you fail, They take the car, and the car is to the banking institute. To the bank, belongs to the bank, and then they sell it out into the in the market, and they recover the money, because bank at the end of the day is not going to lose even a $1 or a 1 dirham. Now, similar thing, if we apply it into the solar business, suppose some has fault, and definitely when you get into the mass markets, you will have a 2%, 3%, 2%, 3%, 5% rates of such type of failures. So how do we address those failures? Is there a market available for a second-hand panels? Is there a people available who will pull out the solar plant on a rooftop which is 20 kilowatt and sell it back and recover at 10% or 20%? So unless we have some type of this type of a solution, the banks will definitely hesitate. Banks are coming forward. They're talking it about their HNIs, and actually, if you go to the HNI, they don't really need the bank loan to actually set up on their home houses. So this is required for a middle class, for a general public, the farmhouses and other things. So this is as far as financing part is concerned. I think some progress. I saw Standard Chartered Bank coming up forward, but that was again for a larger projects. HSBC, some discussions. I had it a 2 round of discussions with them. They are internally discussing it. I'm sure it will come up. If either from the government side, if it is not coming from the government, the banking institution will definitely come if the market is available for a second-hand products. Dubai, it should start, because I think already we are now 4 years old in the solar industry, or so. The first installation maybe 4 or 5 years old. All the inverters have 5 years warranty. So the repair, the maintenance, the O&M, the secondary market is now growing up, and it will take its own shape. So this was, I think, the financing part. Your second point was who are the other stakeholders who can help us in capitalizing maximum from the current situation itself. I think here the one of the basic point which we should address, or we should understand, is, I'll take example of Dubai only, because that's where we are all here and we have understood this market quite well. The market started with the EPC being a major player. So from a manufacturer, then EPCs, and then these EPCs were actually installing it. And today you see the market has moved from the EPCs to actually to the developers. So 70 to 80% of installations which are happening is happening through the developers. So there is a move which is has happened from the EPC company who was not investing the money, who was doing more of a service part, towards a developer who is owning the assets. And when he's owning the assets, he handles engineering, he handles the procurements, he handles the other parts. So they go for installers, and the installers needs you need a many number of installers. The small companies, the real SMEs, or the installers who are trained. Do we have trained people who can handle this rooftop industry if the financing is also available? So I think either a non-profit institutions or the universities or large companies like who are from a utility scale should seriously take this training programs and create more number of installers, which will actually help in increasing up the speed and capitalizing what we have it in our hands. I mean, this is the key point. Of course, you have the integrators and the product availabilities, and all those things are the other aspects to it.
Thank you very much. I can see, Verma Sahab, there is a support in the audience for your point about the hesitation of the banking institutions to finance. The other point you mentioned, the skill gap, or whether the contractor capacity is available to promote. I would like to move to our next panelist with similar questions, taking on what Verma Saab mentioned. Shyam, what is your take on the regulation side, the government policy side? You have a critical role in advising various stakeholders, as you mentioned in your intro. So, do you see some constructive, positive regulation in the region in specific countries? Are some countries ahead of other countries, or what other countries can do to support solarization further?
Thanks, Aftab. Actually, that's the $1 million question, because I said in the beginning, the entire industry runs on what they do. And if they don't draft it, the industry doesn't move an inch. You can have all the manufacturers, distributors, consultants in the market, but if the policy is such, then the projects do get stuck. So while it's too early to say that there are any lapses in the policy, few things that we understand here: they had probably the opportunity and the data sets from other countries to draft at least a long-term plan of the policy. To see short-term cuts in a policy when other developed countries have already led by example or shown their mistakes or had their lessons learned, it would be just generally a common sense view to think that when these areas had started out with their solar plans, the longevity of the policy would not be in question. We would be talking at least 5-10 years long. At least quotas would be drafted out rather than seeing complete, a slow start, or let's say a vague start, or clarity in the specifics of the policy, or immediate cuts or reductions in it. These probably could be avoided if consultants who've worked in other countries, who really probably made mistakes in other countries, would be drafted to understand the implications of these local policies. Because at the end of the day, what is happening? The top players across the board globally start making headquarters in these regions and start getting into the same game. When you attract talent in the industry, they take a while to come and set up shop. But then if your policies don't last the course of time, it doesn't really reflect well. Uh, Having said that, I think the most valid point in the entire discussion was one single statement that you made, that if the installed capacity has been invested in by the utility, you can't simply discount that, because they put their money into it at a time when probably solar was not feasible, and they were future planning at that point as well. So all of us, we could have our own, issues with the policies at our own local level. At the government level, when they decide this sort of investment scales, one has to amortize that, even if it's at the cost of, I won't say a slow deployment of the policy, but they are fully authorized and fully able to put as many gaps or holes as they want to, because there's a larger cause at stake. If you look at it from an environmental standpoint, or what they go and claim in the COP26 and the Davos and the Paris climate, that's a whole different topic. That requires direct government intervention, so as to put those prior investments to be amortized through government money and not through, tariffs and electricity charges for all the consumers. What I do feel is something good happened here, which probably didn't happen around with the intensity and scale with which solar picked up here. In Dubai, for such a small place, 3.54 million people, you started deploying 400 megawatts in a span of 3 years, high quality installations, multi megawatt roofs. When it picks up so fast, there's a lot of enthusiasm in the industry. If that at a country level, you start spreading that around to other emirates, and the neighboring countries pick that up, you sustain that enthusiasm. If you cut that in a process like this, then is this little disenfranchisement for the people who are working in this, and then the crowd starts doing their fallback options already. So they already start thinking about other countries to go to, and plans suddenly change, mostly for leasing companies also, because they've taken a lot of committed, pledged capital to deploy. When there's no projects to deploy, a lot of business plans change overnight. So from a standpoint of longevity in policy, one would think at a very junior and small level of ours compared to a utilities level, that you've had examples of other countries where you've seen it happen. You're talking about 20 years back now in Germany and Italy and France. So unless you really want to see it go through in your own countries and learn from those experiences and then to deploy your policies, the longevity of the policy has a very strong bearing on the quality of the industry that is thriving here. But Fadi, I think, correctly put it in the beginning. If battery storage gets a little bit of push, at least certain aspects of the policy can start improving, because that's the ultimate question, right? If you're producing and there's no way to have uh, the power evacuation, storage really helps you with that. Our only take on the matter is governments have a very responsible role to play in this, because this technology is not going anywhere. Neither are the contractors, manufacturers going anywhere. It will run across the world in a very beautiful way. It's a transitioning industry till you reach your green hydrogen at a very large level. So the role of these utilities and governments is to not disenfranchise the crowd in these countries, because they are actually trying to do something pretty good, pretty positive to bridge this energy gap with solar. Only way to probably do it is to keep it alive and running, and to at least have bare minimum quotas, maybe 50 megawatts per city, 100 megawatts per city, but let it run, let it continue. So that's
Shyam, I take, yeah, no, thank you very much. All valid points. At a very high level, I see a few points emphasized by you. One, the government has a bigger role than simply protecting the investment which utilities have made. We all have a global cause. We are all have to work for the sustainability. The entire human life and the planet life is at stake. The other point you mentioned that there should be a continuity to promote the solar, and countries can learn from each other. There are countries who have done something many years ago. Whether we want to reinvent the wheel or we want to learn from them, and or not only from those developed countries, but like within the Gulf, within the Middle East, we can learn from each other and we can promote those policies which have worked. You referred to Fadi statements and insights. I would like to go back to Fadi for his last take, having heard all the discussion. But before Fadi, we go there, I want to highlight two. I want to raise two things. One is I would like to invite our audience, if they have any questions, we can discuss those points here. And Anand, I will need your help if I miss any question from the audience. Secondly, going back to Shyam, before Fadi, I bother you with your last take. Shyam, when you say the countries should work with each other or learn from each other, and having worked in the countries in the region and advised various stakeholders, do you recommend one or two policies which, in your view, have worked specifically in the region or in countries? Fadi and I discussed at the start of this one-to-one discussion the feed-in tariff. Starting with the feed-in tariff, you also referred to this one. Then we move to the net metering, net billing. We also talk about there are some other regimes within the net billing, some other regimes being developed. So, what is your take on any specific regulation to promote solarization or renewable energy?
Specific regulation wise, I think for me, net metering. So you have to understand two things here. Solar is already feasible at a 3.5 year payback, 30% IRR. You don't need any incentives. You don't need any government push. You probably okay with some loans, but we are aggressively out in the market with end users and CEOs, CXOs, boardrooms, meetings. The number of people who are already convinced on solar is quite high, which is why you've seen what Dubai has done. In its own sweet time and small time, they've spiraled into the solar industry because it's already feasible. So policy is just an aid to now finally getting solar. So if net metering is working well here, it's because it's already feasible. Now you just need to understand the deployment of that policy. How fast are you collecting the documents, giving the approvals, coming for inspections, and signing off on the project? For me, is the policy. The market is taking care of itself. There's very good quality contractors and manufacturers, and the end users are ready to take it on. The job of the utility is to check if the power quality is okay and to let it run. And if you have issues with the harmonics and power quality, then ask for analyzers on the grid. And if you have issues with too much of solar penetration already and grid stability, then have quotas per region, per zone. So for me, what's working well, at least here, what we noticed in Dubai is they're pretty fast with their response. there is a surety of time when you apply for an NOC, what you'll get back. This used to be
Yes.
that specific speed of a utility's response was probably what was missing in other countries. And if till you don't fix that, we could take 10 trips to all these other neighboring countries, but the scale of execution will only pick up. You know how private companies take their decisions. They'll tell us, Sham, we need the project within this year, and if we could spend 6 months doing grid studies and power curves and load profiles, you're actually inhibiting the process. So the
Shyam,
speed of
you have shared the concern and suggestion which Joseph has made about the first thing is to allow connection of the solar with the grid and allow them to supply, and then the rest will be taken care of by the market, the market players, the economics. Solar has become already very economical. We don't need any explicit subsidy from the government. We just want permission from the utility to connect our system, and if we have any excess supply, the net metering can take care of this one. Thank you very much, Sham. Fadi, do you want to share any final word, having heard from other panelists?
Yes, actually, I always see that the distributed generation will prevail. When we say distributed generation, it's producing the energy at the load side, which is for the utilities, it is less losses, more stability to the grid. I don't agree with the DISCO's concern for the stability of the grid affected due to the intermittence of the solar generation. I think this is unjustified because they can simply integrate curtailment controls, and this is done in countries such as Germany with simple controls through FM radio signals. So they can cut down the production by 30% or 70% or even to zero. Second, with the storage, there are a lot of possibilities apart from shifting part of the energy to the other peak hours. So for example, for the evening hours, there are frequency control, voltage control, ramp rate control. So actually integrating storage along with the solar will create stability to the grid. And of course, there are also the whole policy of the government should also integrate other types of renewable energy. For example, wind energy, biogas, waste to energy projects, geothermal, CSP. This will create, the whole lot will create stability to the grid. And for the DISCOs to have a sustainable, let's say, business model, I would also say that there will come a time that the DISCOs would impose grid usage fees, because at the end of the day, we will not need the IPPs producing energy using conventional sources. Most of the energy by the end of the century, it will become distributed generation. So it is no harm that DISCOs impose grid usage fees, but of course not retroactively. So and as a final, let's say, what do we need? What do we want? So apart from what we mentioned about the continuous development of the legislations, storage legislations, I totally agree. I fully agree with Shyam. Expedite the procedures, detaxation and subsidies for the low tariff consumers. For example, in Abu Dhabi, it's still low tariff. In Saudi Arabia, the industries, it's 18 halal. It's a little bit low. We need a little push. So I think there is a lot of.
Thank you very much, Fadi. We have few comments, a few questions coming on from the audience. At the same time, I want to move to other. Thank you very much, Fadi. I want to hear last word from our another panelist, Joseph. I also want to ask before Joseph speak. There are few questions from the audience that are the same policies apply in all the Emirates in the UAE. So my understanding is the answer is no. Each emirate has their own policy, and they can contact Diva in Dubai, for example, and the distribution companies, Alan Distribution Company and Abu Dhabi Distribution Company in Abu Dhabi, and Siva in Sharjah, and so on. Their websites have any plans and policies. But I would like to seek help from the speakers if they can add. Joseph, your last take on the topic today in couple of minutes.
Yes, to conclude, I think that we are on the right track as renewables are coming more and more economical, and the cost of energy from the renewables are becoming more competitive. So I think we have the future is ours, and more installations are coming on, especially in Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf region. This is what I see the market in the future, and especially all the legislation and all the policy that are implemented in Saudi Arabia are helping a lot in decarbonization and implementing solar energy and other renewables.
Thank you very much.
The last thing I want to say that like Engie we are investing a lot in implementing solar energy and other renewables. It's a plus for all the off-takers to take this opportunity and make some benefit and some profits without using their money. So it's a very important opportunity for all the people that are consuming a big amount of energy to use our offers and to make some profits.
Thank you very much for your concluding remarks, Joseph. LK Verma, do you want to share with us your concluding remarks? And if you know the answer to the question, I just see that are there subsidies available in the UAE for solar installation? Very briefly, couple of minutes, please.
Thanks, Aftab. I think most of the points and very important points has already been touched. So in my concluding remarks, I would like to only say or reiterate the same thing, that whatever we have it in our hand, let's capitalize. Let's work towards capitalizing it, at the same point of time while we are working it to improve the system. On your second subsidies, you're talking about all the Emirates of UAE, or?
Yes, it's a general question. Somebody's interested in exploring the UAE market
okay. So
as an EPC contractor.
Okay.
So they are looking for.
Yeah. So Emirates has 7. UAE has 7 Emirates, and Dubai was the first who came up with the policy. Then there's a policy for Abu Dhabi, which is Adiva, which comes under Adiva. Then Shiva is for Sharjah, which is a utility which controls or provides the power in the Sharjah. And rest of the Emirates, they get, apart from 1 or 2 local power producer, but they mostly get a power from a FIWA, which is a federal authority of providing the power. So FIWA there was the latest information what I have with me. There was some discussions of allowing it to net metering or discussions, but I'm not sure whether this has happened. I think some expert like Sham or Fadi may confirm that. But there are discussions from the last 2 years at least at a very serious level how FIWA should also participate in this program of solarization of the UAE.
Oh, thank you very much, Verma Saab. I will turn to Shyam for your concluding remarks. Again, going to the question I have seen from the audience, I'm not aware of any grant, rebate for installation, solar installation, other than the net metering as a supporting mechanism. But if you want to touch on this question and share your final take on the topic, Shyam, I will be grateful.
You're 100% right. There is no grant or subsidy. The time and age now don't require a grant and subsidy. You have a 35%, 31 to 35% rate of return, 3-year payback. You shouldn't be asking for a grant and subsidy. You don't need it. Because when you go to probably the residential sector needs it, they're at 29 fills over here. They have 7-8 years payback. They need it. When you go to a commercial industrial market, they are ready to take on solar. It sells itself right now.
Good, thank you.
From a regulation perspective, I think we maintain our stand before. Just see what's happened around the world, learn from it, and just keep the policy on so that people can keep deploying it even at bare minimum. Keep the pipeline running. And that's the only thing that's needed here. People have come down and put a lot of things at stake. They just need a platform, at least for a couple of years, to keep it running till the other countries come at par with what's happening here.
Thank you very much, Shyam. And thank you very much, all our distinguished speakers, audience, for their patience. I will conclude this session with, again, thank you to the organizers and the speakers. Couple of very quickly few points. Government has an active role to play in the distributed generation. As our speakers mentioned, that we cannot progress distributed generation without the government policy. Stability of the policy is very important. They should evolve with the new technologies, with the new challenges. At the same time, as our speakers also mentioned, that there are opportunities, there are existing opportunities under existing regulation which should be capitalized. The solar makes economic sense, makes business case. This industry, the customers don't need explicit subsidy. They need only permission to self-generate and support from the grid when they need electricity, and so on. Anand, with this one, I would like to hand over to you with thanks to our audience and speakers. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, all our esteemed panelists, for this wonderful session, and a very special thanks to Aftab sir for superbly managing the session. You were absolutely outstanding. So it was a pleasure to having you all in such a well-planned and high-energy panel discussion. So the show is not over yet. We are taking a 10 minutes networking break and we'll be back with another exciting session in which speakers from Siraj Power, Emirates Electrical Engineering, Eki Energy, and our sponsors LONGi and Huawei will join to discuss and share their insights on the topic technological advancements, constructing profitable projects, and assessing viability with storage. So stay tuned, network with your peers, join our sponsors on the networking tables. We'll be back soon. Thank you.